Thanks so much for the invitation to speak at this conference. I've heard some interesting presentations and I'm sure there will be many more to come. I'm an anthropologist who works in the built environment. At the moment, I help property asset managers and development teams create spaces and experiences that deliver value to both business and society. Indeed, COVID-19 has illuminated social inequality and financial precarity in towns and cities, and city makers have a responsibility to address these issues. So what am I going to speak about today? Blurred boundaries, making cities in a digital age. This talk addresses the intersection between the technological and the social in the context of the built environment. That is, how digital technology is used to address social issues, such as loneliness, but at the same time shapes and moulds our social lives and experiences of people working and living, as people living and working in cities. I'm going to cover the following challenges and questions. Digital disruption. Today, most activities can be done with a click of a mouse. So what for the built environment? Network effect. In a moment when the value of physical space is called into question, why should people use it? Shared space. Many people are drawn to physical spaces that are communal because they want to spend time together. How seriously should we take this? Creating community. These shared spaces affect and create communities in different ways. So what should the built environment take away from this? These new ways of imagining and acting community usefully inform how we design, implement and use technology, I argue. So it's circular. It's not just about disruption, but also about the creation of new models for acting and relating using technological interventions. So my first section, digital disruption. We know technology is changing the way we live and work. This is particularly felt by services and spaces that have been in decline for the last few years, seeing decreasing visitor numbers. The public library service is one such example, and it's working extremely hard to find ways of delivering a service that accommodates and caters to the changing needs of its customers. But this requires a better understanding of consumer needs and an insight into how library service should cater for these diverse needs and they use their real estate much more effectively, as well as other channels like digital technology and mobile apps. And of course, as we're all experiencing, COVID-19 has further thrown into question the value of physical spaces, particularly the office. We all now, most of us, are working from home. As the ONS, official National Office of National Statistics reports, in April 2020, nearly half, that's 46.6% of people in the UK in employment did some of their work from home. The vast majority, 86% of these home workers, stating that this is because of the pandemic. COVID-19 is rewriting the rules, and cities and city makers are rapidly adjusting to this new normal. They are reviewing development decisions based on the fact that there will undoubtedly be less office space in city centres and potentially a requirement for more amenities. Indeed, Adzuma surveyed 447 workers and interviewed dozens of businesses about their current plans and opinions. Over half, 60% of people surveyed that they would like to work from home if they had the choice. And 52.6% said they didn't want to return to the office at all after COVID, and that was in 2020. That's only last year. And of course, this has a knock-on effect. Real estate assets have deteriorated in value. Retail and hospitality industries have been the hardest hit in recent months. With real estate investment trusts, there's been varied impact across property types based on the pandemic's influence on tenant businesses. As of 15th of April, the data centre REITs index was up 34% year on year, while retail and hotel REIT indices were down 48% and 53% respectively. So what's the solution? Or what's being moved as the solution to digital disruption? Well, let's talk about network effect. And what does this actually mean? When a network effect is present, the value of a product or service increases according to the number of others using it. How can we use digital technology, specifically mobile data, to understand what is hot and what is not and use it to influence behaviour. Here's a heat map of central London, providing information on the most popular runs. Both documentation this is both a documentation and also reinforces behaviour because people can see this heat map and are attracted to locations based on their use. It's a screenshot of central London and using the Nike Plus training app. And this utilises phone built-in GPS to record the routes that people take in London. And many runs are aggregated and then combined into the heat map, which is overlaid on regular Google Maps. And this is from a social app, Twoo. The app logs when people check in via the app and informs other users the most popular places in central London, thereby attracting more people to the same spot to meet up. It shows a heat map which explains and documents the best places in the capital for meeting new people at different times of the day. And the app uses data to pinpoint the places where true users should go and meet people because, of course, they're already popular amongst true users. So hence it reinforces existing behaviours. The point is that the way property managers and building operators approach property development is that they're trying to attract customers back into buildings via mobile technology. And this technology not only provides details on how popular a building is amongst a specific group of people, but also who is already there. There's an increased reliance on social networks to make physical spaces more valuable to tenants. And this is a technique adopted by public libraries, the retail industry and residential sector alike. So in the next section on shared space, I'm going to talk about the increased popularity of shared or communal spaces and then turn to the concept of community and how it's shaped and being shaped by digital technology. While mobile technology is driving people back to spaces, physical spaces, so there's also an increased need for community or for community to be present in these spaces. Of the people we surveyed and interviewed about their experience of shared spaces in a project that we ran, most people stated that they valued shared spaces because they were an opportunity for them to socialise with other people. In Northern and Central Europe, people enjoy hanging out and learning from others in these shared spaces. So these are the kinds of activities they engage in. And they like the convenience of having access to different kinds of spaces in a single area. So actually, if the functions were co-located, that was a preference for end users. A space that is a one-stop shop, if you like. So there's a preference for living and working spaces, as well as F&B and leisure spaces to be combined or co-located. Such spaces are sometimes called neighbourhoods. The point being that co-location is more important than ever, or multi-use spaces, which is increasingly a popular idea. And this underlines the fact that space is no longer a destination for a single activity, but provides access to a lifestyle and a community. These ideas have underpinned the emergence of the 15-minute city, mooted before the pandemic, but becoming increasingly popular as a result. This is the idea that you can access home, work and amenities within 15 minutes on foot, and is achieved through designing space for multiple uses, or multi-use spaces, increasing proximity but also increasing density. So a quick recap. I've talked about digital disruption and the use of mobile technology to attract people to particular spaces. I've also talked about the attractiveness of shared and multi-use spaces in the digital age. In the final section, I'm going to talk about the importance of community and how community is shaped and expressed in the co-living space in North London. How can these emerging ideas of community be used to inform the design of digital technology as techniques for connection and engagement, online and offline? Our aim in this project, run a couple of years ago now, was to examine the overlapping and divergent ways in which staff, residents and visitors imagine and do living together in a building in North London. Our task was to make recommendations on how to improve people's experiences of living together and understand whether room size had any particular impact on it. In order to understand the importance of room size, we spent a great deal of time with people in their rooms and carried out participant observation by living with residents in this co-living space. We explored the interrelationship between people, i.e. who was living there, purpose, why they were living there, and place, how they were living there. And discovered that people create and sustain a community in three main ways: ideological and everyday, temporal and spatial, and scalable sociality. Let's start with the first. Ideological and everyday. Community was imagined as something, and also as a process of peer-to-peer problem solving and mutual support. On the one hand, staff had an ideological concept of community as a thing to be discovered and entered into, as if it was already made. On the other hand, residents found out that community was a process, and constantly being made and unmade, created and sustained, as they worked together to resolve problems in context and in situ. Temporal and spatial. Residents wanted access to spaces where they could come together in small groups, and also different kinds of rooms for group gathering. Of course, this meant that group gathering and spaces that were designed for gathering were highly visible, and residents also sought privacy and sought to escape from view. Hence, they negotiated public and private, visible and invisible, using different spaces accordingly. The third area of focus was scalable sociality. Digital spaces, and this is where we turn to the use of the digital. Smart devices, mobile phones, gave people access to digital spaces where they could use different social media platforms such as WhatsApp, Facebook and Twitter to engage in different ways. WhatsApp was used for smaller group conversations, whereas Facebook was more of a public space. And these offered three ways of making and sustaining community, and at the same time a way to make home the shared living space in North London. And our argument was room size was less relevant than these methods of forming community. And we noted that community was not one thing, not one single thing, but fragmented, layered and transient. It came and went, and was created and sustained through different ways of coming together and making meaning in this space. Hence, we wanted to articulate, and the point of this presentation is to explore and explain the complexities of these kinds of social forms like community. And whilst they are shared as a concept, they have multiple meanings and interpretations and are approached in different ways by different people. And so I'm ending this presentation with a provocation. I've explored how digital technology is used to address real estate challenges and social issues. But also I'd like to ask a question. How does it shape and mould the lives and experiences of people living and working in cities? In an age of digital disruption and network effect, it's important to consider the multiple ways in which community, quote, is imagined and enacted in practice, and the ways in which such imaginaries and practices should and could be used as a model for design. Thank you.